You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. Welcome in. Today is episode 19, and I want to talk about ways to keep your lymphatic system healthy and flowing. And I am really excited to talk about this because it's a huge part of my practice. It's something that I work with clients every single day on. And when the lymphatic system is flowing and healthy, you can see it in your eyes. Your whites of your eyes are whiter and brighter. You can see it in your face. There's less puffiness, less dark under eye circles. The skin is clearer. Your skin is more moisturized. You can feel it in your energy and your mood. And there's just so many benefits to supporting your lymphatic system. And so I'm really excited to share 7 strategies that I have that you can incorporate into your daily lifestyle. Maybe not all of them at once on the same day, but 7 things that you can do that are very accessible to help support lymphatic health. And of course, I always want to start with a reminder that I'm an esthetician and an herbalist, not a doctor. And as I'm so excited to share these tips with you, I also want to remind you that you are in charge of your body and your health, and the information provided in my podcast episodes are always for educational purposes only. They're never a substitute for personalized medical advice. For personalized medical advice, you always want to consult with a healthcare practitioner before trying any new practices, because what works for one person may not work for another, right? So it's important to consider your health and your unique circumstances. And I think we all know that, but it also deserves being said. So I talked about some of the benefits that you can see from a healthy, flowing lymphatic system, something that you care for. But some signs that your lymphatic system might need some love include chronic swelling or edema. So, especially in your limbs, if you're experiencing a lot of swelling, lymphatic lymphatic approaches might be supportive for you. If you get sick all of the time, a weakened immune system or frequent infections can be a sign of poor lymphatic function. Chronic fatigue or low energy levels, digestive issues like constipation, bloating, diarrhea, chronic skin issues like acne, eczema. And it's so surprising, even dry skin can be an indicator of lymphatic congestion. Weight gain, unexplained weight gain, stubborn weight gain, difficulty losing weight, joint pain and stiffness. I always know that if I wake up and my neck is really stiff, that it's time to help work the lymph through that area. If you wake up and your jaw is sore, obviously that could have to do with jaw clenching, or will most likely have to do with jaw clenching, but supporting lymphatic movement through there can also be helpful. Headaches and migraines, poor circulation. So if you often have cold hands and feet, numbness, tingling in the extremities, brain fog and poor concentration can also indicate that you want to give your lymph some love. So, before we talk about the strategies that I have for you, I want to nerd out a little bit about how cool and complex our bodies are. The lymph system is truly this extensive and dynamic network that runs through our body, and it plays a role in a lot of different functions. It's most often talked about as like our body's waste management system or the body's sewage system, because it's got this beautiful ability to collect cellular waste and pathogens and quote unquote toxins and flush them out of the body. It's going to take them away from the cells, and the lymph nodes are going to act like little washing machines and clean it, and then it's going to go back into the blood. And so that's what it's often talked about as, but it's not as often talked about how lymph can be responsible for carrying nutrients around the body. It can be responsible for transporting hormones, for supporting the absorption of the fat that you eat that your body needs. It's also got a role in maintaining fluid balance in our body, which is incredibly complex and important. And lymph has been having a major moment for the last couple of years. And I really think that that's just going to grow happily. I'm really excited about that. And I think that this is because, of course, there's a growing trend with holistic and integrative health practices. And I also think it's because of this beautiful growing awakening where people are taking a more hands-on approach with their health. And as you'll see in the strategies that I give you today, the lymph system and lymphatic support is definitely one of those places where you can support it at home. You can do your own practices to support the health of the lymphatic system. So let's take a dive into the body. We're going to just pile into the magic school bus and head into the lymphatic system. It has many parts that make it up. The first is the lymph fluid itself. So your lymph is this clear yellowish fluid, and it's made up of water and lipids and immune cells like white blood cells. It's got proteins and salts and other substances. And lymph is born, it's created when blood plasma leaks out of the capillaries, and it normally will do this and then go into the space between your cells. And this is called interstitial fluid. And interstitial fluid is in between every cell. It bathes and surrounds the cells. And then this fluid, most of it is going to get reabsorbed back into the capillaries. So they're sucking it back in. And we have some that's left over. Some stuff can't make it back into the capillary walls. And that's going to be, again, things like cellular waste, pathogens, toxins within the body. And so that stuff instead is going to get moved into lymphatic capillaries. So it's interesting because our lymphatic system and our circulatory system, our blood system, are very similar. They both have capillaries, they both have vessels, and they're very unique to each other. So blood goes in the blood capillaries, lymph, well, it's not lymph yet, I should say. So we've got this excess fluid, this interstitial fluid that didn't go back into the blood capillaries. It's then going to move into the lymph capillaries. And then when it enters the lymph vessels, it's now considered lymph. And so it's going to move into these very tiny tubes, the lymph vessels, and they're about the diameter of a strand of hair. So they're very tiny. And within these lymph vessels, we have lymphatic valves. So the valves are what keep the lymph always moving in one direction. It's a one-way street. And the valves open and close. And this opening and closing event of the valves is actually what propels lymphatic fluid forward. So it creates kind of like a vacuum and pushes it through that vessel. And as the lymph is traveling around these tiny tubes, these lymphatic vessels, it's going to make pit stops. And the pit stops are what are called lymph nodes. And this is a bean-shaped structure, and our body has a lot of them. The body has 600 to 700 lymphatic nodes. And within the node, it's like a little washing machine. And so the lymph goes through lots of different processes within this little tiny washing machine. It's worked on by immune cells, by lymphocytes, and it's cleaned out. And within the lymph node, it's really interesting. Things like dyes and dust will actually be taken out of the lymph fluid and put into a little jail. They're basically quarantined in there for the rest of your life. And so this is why if somebody has a lot of tattoos, if they are doing a post-mortem examination of the body, say, and they open up a lymph node of somebody who has a ton of tattoos, the dye from the ink actually gets quarantined in that little jail. And so when they open the lymph node, there's dye in there. And so it's the same thing if you color your hair a lot. That dye will get absorbed into your bloodstream and eventually into the lymphatic fluid and go into the lymph node. If you live in a really dusty area like the desert, Las Vegas comes to mind. You'll get that in the lymph node as well. So it's very interesting and very effective. And so they're moving through, they make their pit stops at the lymph node. And then before they go back to the bloodstream, which is the lymph's final destination, it's going to pass through two main lymph ducts. And this is the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. So after these two ducts, they are going to empty into the area. It's like a trough right between your clavicle and your neck. And so you'll oftentimes see online tutorials to help support the lymphatic system, and people will say to stimulate that area first. And that's why, because all of the lymph, all the way from your toes up to your crown, is always passing through and being emptied into that area, and then finally being dumped back into the bloodstream to start this whole process over again. So it's pretty interesting, and I just love to imagine that happening as I'm doing the strategies that I'm going to share with you next, just because it's fun. So keep in mind that there are many ways to support the lymphatic system, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means. But what I don't want you to do from walking away from this episode is feel overwhelmed. I don't want you to feel like you have to do all 7 of these things every single morning. If you incorporate all of the healthy living activities, your morning routine is going to take 6 hours, and there's not going to be time for life outside of your self-care practices. So take these lists of options. And the way that I like to do this is I have a morning routine menu, an evening routine menu, and then I have a Sunday self-care menu. And so I keep these in a document in my Notion app. And I love Notion because you can create all kinds of different to-do lists, project management, all kinds of stuff, but you can make it aesthetic and you can make it pretty. And I definitely want my things to look beautiful. So I have these lists within there, and it's like choose 3 within the time allotted. So that way I can choose 3 and I can do the same 3 things the next day, or I can choose 3 different things. And it gives me a little bit of variety. It keeps me from feeling overwhelmed by all of the things. And it's also just really fun. I thought it would be cool to make it into like a physical menu and get my arts and crafts on and have like this piece of paper that I look at in the morning that's really cute. So that's an option as well. But all of that to say, don't feel overwhelmed. So let's get to it. Number 1 is moving your body. And it's often talked about how there's no pump that moves lymph fluid, like how the circulatory system has the heart as the pump. But that's not entirely true. Our muscles actually serve as the pumps for the lymphatic system. And that's because when muscles contract when we're moving, they squeeze the lymphatic vessels nearby. And this is exactly why Botox inhibits lymphatic movement, because it's paralyzing the muscle, inhibiting its ability to squeeze the lymph nodes, or squeeze the lymphatic vessels nearby that muscle. This is why moving your body every single day is so important to lymph health and keeping the movement flowing. Some things that I love to do for supporting lymphatic health include walking, swimming, yoga, lifting, cycling, jumping rope. These are all great ways to do this. But one really unique way that I especially love is rebounding. So this is basically just jumping up and down on a rebounder or a mini trampoline. And this is a really special and a really unique form of movement from a lymphatic drainage perspective. And that's because of the way that it creates an interaction with gravity. So, gravitational force, or G force, helps to stimulate the opening and closing of those little lymphatic valves. So as you're pushing off of the trampoline surface when you're jumping and moving upwards, you're going to experience an increase of the gravitational force, or the G force. This is because you're accelerating against gravity. This part of the movement encourages the opening of those one-way valves again in the lymphatic system. And then at the highest point of the bounce, there's a momentary suspension where the G force is reduced. And this reduction in pressure can actually help lymphatic fluid move freely through the open valves without any resistance. And then as you descend, the increased G force caused by gravity helps to propel the lymphatic fluid downward. And when you land on the trampoline, the impact compresses the lymphatic vessels, and this, followed by the rebound as the trampoline propels you upwards again, creates a pumping effect. So if that alone doesn't inspire you to get a rebounder and start doing it all the time, I don't know what will. I think that's so cool. I loved learning about exactly what was happening, because I always see like on social media that this rebounding is specifically so good. And I never really understood why until I looked it up in preparation for this. And it just got me so excited. And I feel like rebounding is also having a bit of a moment right now, or at least in my algorithm, it is, because I'm getting all of these cute little rebounder girls who are making that their main niche. And I just love seeing all of the different workouts. So I've been doing YouTube rebounder workouts, and it burns a ton of calories. You're sweating so much, you're out of breath, and it's just so fun. So if you have a rebounder, I highly suggest dusting it off, pulling up some rebounder YouTube videos, and doing the workouts. And if you don't have a rebounder, I highly suggest you check out some of the people on social media who talk about the best rebounders and get yourself one, because it's just so fun and it's a really supportive movement for your lymphatic fluid. So that was number one. Number two is deep breathing. Deep breathing aids lymph movement because of the diaphragm's movement during the deep inhalation and exhalation. This creates pressure changes that help push lymph fluid through the vessels. So taking some time for intentional deep breathing every day is so important for a million different reasons, but also it's going to help with this lymph flow. I'm personally a big fan of triangle breathing. That's what feels really good in my body. And so that's an inhale for a count of, I don't know, say 6, a hold for a count of 6, and then an exhale for a count of 6. So it's making a triangle because it's 3 equal inhale, hold, release. Another option is 4, 7, 8 breathing. So that's an inhale for 4, a hold for 7, and exhale for 8. Wim Hof breathing is also kind of fun. So that's taking like 30 to 40 breaths, inhaling deeply through your nose, fully expanding the lungs, and then exhaling quickly but not forcefully. If you're interested in learning more about Wim Hof breathing, there's a Wim Hof breathing app. And then I'm also a big fan of the Insight Timer app, which is a free meditation app. And they have several guided deep breathing meditations that you can just press play on and follow along. And it's super easy. This is something that I highly recommend getting into every day. You could do some type of a habit stacking situation where maybe you're already really good at wearing your red light mask, or you're always making your coffee every morning, or there's something that you do every single day where you're able to be still for a couple of minutes. Incorporating deep breathing into that is just so helpful. I can't say enough about how important good breathing habits are. Number 3 out of 7 is castor oil packs. I actually have my castor oil pack on right now. I'm recording this right before bed, and this is something that I often sleep with. Castor oil packs are a really easy one because it takes truly no time at all. You just pour the oil on a cloth and then tie it on and go to sleep with it. So that's just one way. And I do this so often because it just feels like a hug. And I find that it decreases anxiety and improves sleep. And if you've never used castor oil, it's like this thick, sticky, almost the consistency of syrup oil. And it's pressed from castor beans. And as I was researching for this episode, of course, I was like, well, I've never really thought about the castor plant. So I started researching it, fell down a rabbit hole, of course, as I often do when looking up plants. And I thought it was so interesting because there's a compound in the castor plant that, when made into an extract, so this is nothing to do with the oil. You would never see this in the oil whatsoever, so no worries. But the extract of this compound called ricin is one of the most toxic biological agents known. It's actually a Schedule 1 chemical warfare agent. Fun fact. So, just another reminder that just because something comes from the earth doesn't mean it's benign. But again, it's always partitioned from the cold pressed oil that comes from the castor bean. And all of that to say, I digress, but what makes castor so unique is ricinoleic acid, which is an unsaturated omega-9 fatty acid. This fatty acid has the unique ability to increase circulation. It has a drying and detoxifying effect. It reduces inflammation, and it's also analgesic or pain relieving. And so, for this reason, castor oil uniquely is able to increase lymphatic flow within your entire body. And it also helps the liver to support the liver in its detoxification job. So you can apply organic castor oil to an unbleached flannel cloth. And I will say that you want to make sure your castor oil is in a glass bottle because it has that really strong drawing ability. And so you don't want it to be drawing from any type of plastic, whether it be BPA plastic or not. So glass is a much better option. And you're going to take this cloth and you're going to saturate it with the castor oil. And then you can apply it to your liver. So, or the area on top of your liver. So this is going to be right on your right side under your ribs. And you can apply another cloth and you can apply heat on top of this. And if you do heat, 20 minutes to 2 hours is appropriate. Or you can do what I do, which is use the brand Queen of the Thrones. And she's created this product where she's got the unbleached organic flannel and you can tie it around, and it then has like this non-toxic cover that goes on top of it to prevent the oil from staining your clothes. It's much less messy, and I'm always for low to no mess. And so I really like the Queen of the Thrones product that she has created. It's reusable and it's quite a good value for the amount of times that you can use it. And then a way to increase its use is to actually purchase another piece of organic unbleached flannel, which you can get at the natural food store. You can find it on Amazon. And so put that on, like, okay, so we're laying down the Queen of the Thrones product, the piece of cloth. You're going to lay that down, quote unquote, plastic piece facing the counter. And then you're going to take your new piece of flannel and you're going to put it right on top of it. And then you're going to pour the castor oil on top of that. I learned that from my good friend at Sunbird Collective. She also carries a castor oil product. So if you want to shop even smaller, check her out on Instagram. But she posted this method and I've been doing it ever since she posted it. And it's just going to make my Queen of the Thrones product last even longer. Okay, so number 4 is dry brushing. This is going to help mechanically move lymph because the firm bristles are going to gently stretch the skin without applying a ton of pressure, and then it's going to rebound. So this is similar to what manual lymphatic drainage is doing, but it's just a very easy, no-brainer way to do a similar movement. This is going to enhance blood flow. It's going to improve overall circulation. And the best time to dry brush is actually right after a shower because the body's warmed up, the circulation is increased, and this is going to allow for better lymphatic movement. The second best time to dry brush is any time that you can fit it into your schedule. So those are my suggestions for dry brushing. I was going to kind of walk you through how to dry brush, but I think it's really hard through audio to do that. What I will say is if you're looking at tutorials online, if they are not showing you to stimulate that area, that trough between your clavicle and your neck first, that's telling you that that's not an optimized way to dry brush, and there are better tutorials out there. Additionally, it's an antiquated slash non-optimized, less supportive uh, way to dry brush if you're just always thinking about going from the extremities towards the heart. Instead, you want to be working towards the major lymph clusters. And so that's going to be in the underarms, in the groin, behind the knees. And so as you're dry brushing, you're doing these short strokes, brushing the brush across your skin. And let's say we're working on the underarm area. We're going to start closest to there and then move our way down the arm, continuing to brush towards the underarms, if that makes sense. So you're doing it in sections, and you always want to clear out the area closest to the major clusters first, and then move down that extremity toward the major clusters. So a couple of great accounts that I love on Instagram for beautiful lymphatic tutorials are two different massage therapists that can show lovely full body tutorials, Lymph Love Club and Kristen Sloan Massage. They both have chef's kiss tutorials for lymphatic movement. Okay, number 5 is adequate hydration. Adequate hydration helps to maintain our overall fluid balance, including our lymphatic fluid. And when our body is dehydrated, lymphatic fluid actually becomes thicker and flow is less efficient, which of course can lead to congestion. So proper optimized hydration does not mean just chugging water all the time. Optimized hydration means that you are taking strategies to actually get the water into the cells. And some of my favorite ways to do this are to add electrolytes to your water. Maybe add a pinch of sea salt to your lemon water. Maybe you are drinking bone broth, which is incredibly mineral rich. Maybe you drink mineral rich herbal teas like nettle tea. These are all ways to make sure that you're actually getting the water into your cells. And then getting back to herbal teas like nettle teas, my next suggestion is herbs for lymph. And a lot of lymph herbs are also very mineral rich. And so I'm going to talk about my first two favorite, which is cleavers and red clover. I love cleavers, red clover, and nettle all together in a overnight infusion. So I usually will do equal parts nettle, cleavers, red clover. And the ratio that I really love for herbal teas is 1 tablespoon of herbs to 1 cup of water. And so I will boil my water and I will fill a quart jar with boiled water, and I will have 4 tablespoons of my herb all mixed together. And I will allow this, I'll shake it up, and then I'll allow it to sit on the counter overnight. And this slow water infusion is the best way to extract minerals. And then in the morning, I will strain it and just have that quart of tea to sip on throughout the first part of the day. And so this is just such a beautiful formulation for eczema, for lots of different skin issues. And cleavers and red clover specifically are so beautiful for lymphatic support. There's many lymphatic herbs that have a stimulating effect on the lymphatic system, helping to increase the flow of lymph. Others include calendula, self-heal, chickweed, violet. Chickweed and violet are both known as moistening lymphatic herbs. The others are a little bit more drying. So, whenever you are working with herbs for yourself and you're figuring out what herbs that you want to consume, it's important to consider your body's constitution. So, thinking about if you're a dry person, if you feel more brittle, if you have drier skin, drier hair, if your personality is more brittle, if you don't tend to hold on to water very much. These are all signs of a dry constitution. And so herbs that are really dry, like calendula, cleavers, red clover, these herbs can dry you out even further and feel really uncomfortable in your body. And so, if that's the case, you may consider working with violet or chickweed. Or you can work with those drier herbs, but you just want to compensate with more moistening herbs. So, two of my favorites that come to mind are linden and marshmallow. And so, if I were making a tea, let's say I was doing 1 part calendula, 1 part cleavers, I would also add like a 1/2 part to 1 part marshmallow. And then maybe I'd also add like some peppermint for flavor. And that would be a lovely lymphatic tea. You can also look on Etsy for lymphatic supportive herbal teas. But I really encourage you, if this is interesting to you, to purchase some cut and sifted dry herbs off of like Mountain Rose Herbs is a really wonderful and accessible online herb supplier. They generally have high quality herbs. And just play, like make yourself a tea, make different recipes with the tea, and just start to get to know herbs in that way. I think it's a really beautiful way to take your health into your own hands and a great way to start learning herbalism. Tea is just one of my favorite ways to interact with plants all the time. Okay, we've made it to number 7, and that is hot and cold therapy. So, hot and cold therapy involves alternating between hot and cold temperatures, which cause blood vessels to dilate and contract. So, vasodilation and vasoconstriction. And alternating between hot and cold can also help to relax and contract muscles. And so both of these things are going to help promote movement of lymph. A really easy and accessible way to do this is alternating between hot and cold water in the shower. So using each temperature for about 1 to 2 minutes. And of course, if you have access to cold plunge and sauna, this is another beautiful option. Okay, so let's go through our 7 habits again, just to recap. Number 1, we have movement, especially rebounding, deep breathing, castor oil packs, dry brushing, adequate hydration, lymphatic herbs, and hot and cold therapy. I hope that this is supportive to you. Next week, I'm going to be back with my first ever expert interview, my friend Lane Walker, who's a local acupuncturist and herbalist. And we're going to be talking all things summer seasonal living, because at the time of this recording, we are quickly approaching the first day of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. And of course, we also got into cosmetic acupuncture and what that is and who it can support. So I'm very excited for that. And until then, be well. You've been listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality. If you liked what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you to find the show. You can shop my products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels @stratumaesthetics.